Howdly doodly there, neighborinos. Hope you're having a flanderific day. Um, Honestly, I really was not horribly sure about what we're going to talk about today, and I'm still not entirely sure. I've got, in the words of everyone's favorite president, I have concepts of a plan. Um, so I guess we will talk about. Just first off, this is definitely not going to be enough to get us through the episode, but it is something I feel like I was like supposed to tell you, like a message that I think God wants me to put out there. Not like he like spoke to me and told me to do it or anything, but I just feel compelled to say it. Just want to clarify there. I'm not a prophet. Because I laugh at that, because there are plenty of people out there who claim they are. Um, and yeah, just in case for whatever reason, part 85 is like your first episode or something. I'm not like a crazy person actually. Um, I mean, I guess some people would probably disagree with that sentiment, but people who think that are probably themselves crazy. So I don't know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Um, I feel like, and I've been trying to get better about this myself in these past few weeks. Um, and I feel like it's helping me grow closer to God. So I want to share it. Just try inviting God into your life. You know, just well, I mean, I guess let me rephrase that. I mean, you should definitely do that, but like that can be taken another way, which I mean, it's not wrong and it's good. It's very good actually, but it's not quite the point I'm trying to make is like I guess a step past that, if that makes sense. Like you've already like accepted Jesus and asked him to come into your life, but like just for like small shit, for example, maybe here's a good one. I asked God like, "Oh, what should I talk about for this episode? I don't really have any ideas. Um so yeah, that would be an example. Um I prayed to him a lot about my car. Um let's see here. I like to just thank him for just some of the things that happen in my life. And I guess the greater point to this is, um, no matter how small it is or how dumb it might seem or how insignificant in the grand scheme of things it may appear to be, God cares about it because God cares about you. If it's bothering you or if it's making you happy, and I mean, I guess with a caveat there, um, because there's lots of things that I'm sure could make you kind of happy that are sinful. Um, um, but I don't know, like if you really enjoy playing soccer, I don't know why I thought about that. I don't like playing soccer. I don't even like watching soccer. But if you really like soccer, right? And you can just be like, God, thank you for like the opportunity I get to play soccer and like for just, you know, uh, I don't know, things about soccer. I don't know why I picked that because I don't know anything about soccer. All right, like I don't know. Just thank you for having me enjoy it. I guess thank you that it is a thing that I can do, you know. Um, it may seem like kind of dumb and insignificant, but God cares about that because God cares about you, like, very deeply. Um, I think it's in Matthew, and I kind of wish G or Steven was here because they're like, this is the correct book and this is the correct verse, and I'm just like, it's in there somewhere. I think it's here. Um, yeah, I'm not the best about remembering chapter and verses. I'm a big picture kind of guy, you know. Um, but I think it's in Matthew where it talks about um, if God cares enough to make sure that the birds are fed, how much more does he care about you? So again, it may not seem like it's like, in your opinion, worthy of God's time, because I used to think that way too, like, you know, God's got bigger fish to fry, and you know, he cares about my soul, and like he knows all of this shit's gonna go away, so it's not worthy of bringing up to God. But that's not. I don't think that's a correct way of thinking anymore. The more that I read the Bible, and the more that I learn about God's character, that's not the right way to see it. Like I said, he cares so deeply about you that it doesn't if people, I mean, well, it's so dumb, but I'm going to use it again because and I'm not saying it's dumb because it's just like the bottom of the barrel example. It's just dumb because I, again, don't know anything about soccer. Um, but like, would God be interested in soccer if like, I don't know, if no one enjoyed it and no one really played it? I don't know. Probably not. But then again, I don't know. But if you really enjoy it, and obviously there's nothing sinful about playing soccer. I mean, I guess unless you like cheat or whatever, or like purposely try to hurt somebody. Um, but if you're just playing it normally or whatever, there's nothing sinful about it. So if you're enjoying it, that would make God happy. I'm not saying he always wants you to be happy, but he wants you to find some kind of enjoyment. And, like, yeah, we are supposed to, like, I know it's gonna sound really bad, but like, we are supposed to, like, suffer in this world. I mean, that's the nature of the earth that we live in. And of course, suffering, builds faith and strength, um, and strengthen your faith. um, but I mean, personally, I don't think he wants you to feel that 24/7, right? Like, that's why there was like a Sabbath, for God to rest. And not that he needed to, but like as an example for us. So yeah, I think it's a good thing for us to have like some things in life that we enjoy and to share those with God. Same thing goes for like bad things too. So, like, here's an even better example because I can actually talk about this. I actually know about this. Like with my car and the battery not working. That was a hugely stressful ordeal for me. Now, like, do you think that a car battery is going to bother God? Probably not. But he absolutely cares that it would be, I mean, in this case, I guess, stressing me out. Really, like, bothering me. Um, and it's a multifold thing with that. With the other one, it's just like, yeah, bring God in, for when I say the other thing, I mean like for good things, like the soccer thing. Like that one is just pretty straightforward. It's like you're just sharing your enjoyment with God and thanking him for it. But with this one, with bad things, it's a bit deeper than that. Because first off and foremost, you're accepting that. I don't know if this is entirely correct here, and take everything I say here with a grain of salt. Um, and if you can find things in the Bible that disprove it, please go ahead. I do not claim to be the arbiter of God, the end all be all on anything. I'm very open to being wrong about all of this, but I feel like it's pretty solid. Um, Maybe I get a few things wrong here and there, but like I said, do feel free to correct me. Do feel free to like, and I actually not only feel free to, but I would heavily encourage you to look through the Bible to like fact check me, I guess. Um, but when it comes to, I mean, I guess getting back to the point, when it comes to bad things, you're essentially saying at the end of the day, you're powerless against the issue that you're facing, and it's only through God that you're going to be able to succeed, or with like the will of God that you're going to be able to succeed. And I mean, not every time you're going to like succeed in the way that you want to succeed. Sometimes, God has another path. There's a reason why the bad thing is not, I don't know. Well, there's a reason why the battery won't charge in your car. Okay? Sometimes there's a reason for that. Well, I mean, I guess there always is a reason for that, but anyway, regardless of my semantics there, I guess, well, I mean, it was objectively incorrect, but anyway, so on top of that, like I said, you give God the ultimate power. That is a much better way of saying what I just said. That is yeah, scratch out what I said earlier. You're giving God the ultimate power, because that is where the ultimate power lies, is with God. You're also, like I said, just sharing that with him, like he knows, but he wants you to share it with him anyway, because getting back to what I was saying on the good part, with good things, he cares about you. He wants to hear it from you, like a parent and their child. Like, I'm sure that a parent knows a lot of, maybe obviously not everything, but like knows a lot about their child, but they're still very happy to like, have their child confide in them, um And it's also just a really good exercise in, I mean, I guess this kind of connects with the first thing I was saying, but it's a good exercise in understanding it's God's will be done, not your own. So, yeah. Like I said, just share things with him. I mean, like I said, big, small, bad, good, you know. He wants to hear it all. I guess this is the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about. Honestly, I probably could do a whole video upon just this topic, but I think we're going to just very briefly skim over it, because in the future we will be back on this topic, I promise. And it's morality being a proof of God. And what I mean by that is we have morality in this world. We know that killing is wrong, and stealing is wrong, and doing a stop, don't touch me there, that's my no-no square is wrong. But how do we know that that is wrong? Because you take a look at, I don't know, you could take a look at animals. Animals don't really feel bad about killing each other. They don't really, I mean, in certain animals like ducks and cats, they really do not care about the stop, don't touch me there, that's my no-no square. And animals will happily steal from anything. I mean, you don't believe me? Go ahead and put a hamburger on the table in the same room as your dog and leave the room and tell me what happens to that hamburger. The dog might feel bad when he sees you after he's eaten the hamburger, but that's not morality. That is the dog knowing this is my master and he's not going to be happy with me. You know? That's not like, I know I've done something wrong. It's more like, I don't want to be punished. Anyway, regardless, how do you get that in an atheist worldview? I mean, what people will say, and I know this to be the case because I literally have argued about this before, and I literally got this very exact answer that I'm about to give. Well, either it's one of two things, but it's essentially the same argument. I know that, like, I personally know that things are wrong. I personally base morals upon objective consequences, which, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but okay. And then the other one, which is really, I think, the real answer they were getting at, but when I kind of pointed out that it doesn't work that way, they had to switch to the one I gave before. Society dictates morals. So, you then have to ask yourself, if society dictates morals, well then, whose morals are objectively correct? If society dictates morals, then you can't say that Hitler was wrong, because that's what his society came up with. Society told him that was okay. That is actually the textbook definition of society inventing morals, is the Nazis. They invented their own morals. But with a Christian worldview, we know, and this is a very sound answer, morals come from God. Come from specifically Jesus. Because, I mean, some people will say that there's certain things in the Old Testament, and I mean, there are some kind of fucked up things in the Old Testament. Like, I mean, now, there's a big difference between servant, or bondsman, and slave. Bondsmen are not slaves. Bondmen are, like, servants who have done something wrong, and as punishment, they have to, like, be your servant for X amount of years, and then they're free. So that is not a slave. Slaves, on the other hand, the Bible does mention it once. Well, I mean, it mentions it a few times, but the only time that, like, it directly, like, talks about how slavery should be treated is only once, and it's in Leviticus. I believe it's in Leviticus. It's either in Leviticus or Exodus. So the perfect moral law only comes from Jesus. What we get in the Old Testament, well, I mean, I guess you could say the Ten Commandments are also a perfect moral law, because they came directly from God. What we find in Leviticus and in parts of Exodus and maybe even in parts of Deuteronomy are, I could be wrong, but I read it in Genesis. When Adam and Eve ate from the fruit, their eyes was open and they knew of good and evil. Yes. So I'm going to be honest with you. In Genesis, I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that being perfectly literal. But essentially, I mean, if we're going to look at it literally, then yes, that is what happened. They ate of the fruit, and they didn't know what evil was. And when they ate the fruit, they knew what evil was, and they were a bit more cognizant of what was going on, I suppose. I don't necessarily subscribe to Genesis being literal, because it just doesn't match with science, and we can't accept one and throw the other out. We need the best combination of the two, and that's where we'll find the truth. So I think it's most likely just poetry. Personally, I think humans, life evolved, right? And then humans, like, evolved from probably Homo erectus. I mean, there's, well, not directly, but, like, there was a few steps between Homo erectus and humans. But regardless of it, it doesn't really matter. God gave us a soul, which makes us different from all the other ones. Like Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Neanderthals, which we actually don't evolve from Neanderthals. Some people say that. That's actually not true. They're like essentially a cousin species of ours. we're actually more related to chimpanzees than, I don't know why I said that weird. Anyway, we're closer more closely related to chimpanzees than than Neanderthals. And we're actually not descendant from chimpanzees either. It's like a sister. They're like a sister to us, essentially. But yeah, God gave us a soul, and the devil deceived us, and I'm not exactly sure what the sin would have looked like. I don't know. Yeah. My way of thinking is like it's actually scientifically grounded, because if you think about it, Cade killed Abel. God confronted about Cain lied, and he knew it was wrong. He seemed to me right. Yeah, he knew that was wrong. It's interesting you should bring up Cain, because I was literally just about to bring him up. In my, I guess we'll say, headcanon, where we combine science and the Bible, Cain is essentially banished, and he leaves, and he goes, it's either west, or sorry, it's either east or north, which is interesting because he ends up finding a wife, and it's like, who is this wife and her people that Cain finds? And it's fascinating because you know who was northeast of the roundabout area of Eden? Oh yeah, that's where the Neanderthals were. I think his wife was a Neanderthal. And that is the group of people that Cain found was Neanderthals. Which would explain why they weren't living with Adam and Eve, because Neanderthals tend to be in their own, like, very close family groups. That's why so many Neanderthals were inbred. That's also part of the reason why they died out, is because they were inbred. And just changing of the earth as well. So that's my thoughts on that. Again, I really don't entirely know what the sin would have been that Adam and Eve committed. But yeah, I also believe, because I've been asked about this before, it says that essentially they wouldn't have died if they hadn't eaten of the fruit, and I take that to mean that maybe humans wouldn't have, maybe they wouldn't have died. Maybe they wouldn't have died if they hadn't sinned. Humans specifically. Because a lot of things died. A lot of things died before we got to Adam and Eve. You know, just from the Cambrian and the Cretaceous and the Triassic and the Jurassic and, yeah, the Cenozoic. So many things died. Well, actually, Cenozoic, I think, would have been around the time that human-like ancestors would have been around. I say human-like because I think that we're talking about, like, Homo erectus and stuff in the Cenozoic. Anyway, that's kind of off topic. But yeah, so the case for morality and it being a proof of God, like I said, Christians can say that we objectively know that our morality is correct because it comes from God, who is divine, who is omnipotent, omniscient, and created everything. People who do not believe in God really have no leg to stand on with morality. Because again, if you believe that society can dictate morals, then you end up with Nazi Germany. You end up with the Soviet Union. Those are what you end up with if you leave morality in the hands of man rather than coming from God. Another good example of this is if you take away a baby's ice cream, right? Or I guess we'll say pacifier, because that'll be. I don't know if babies have ice cream. I'm not a baby guy, so I don't know. But if you take away a baby's pacifier, it will cry. It will know that feels unfair, right? So the question then becomes, where does that idea of fairness come from? And for things to be fair, that means things have to be unfair, right? So for something to be good, there must be something bad. So you must then ask yourself, which came first, good or bad? The answer should be quite simple. Good had to have come before bad, right? Because you take a look at it. Stealing is an inverse of giving. Lying is an inverse of telling the truth. You can't start at lying and get to telling the truth. Because in order for lying to exist, the truth has to already exist, if that makes sense. So that means that, again, morality had to have been something that's it's outside of humans. It's outside of us. And when we try to take it into our own hands, that's when you get Nazi Germany. Again, an atheist cannot say for certain the Nazis were wrong. An atheist can't say that. As a Christian, I can say that very easily. I can say the Nazis were wrong. They were bad. They were evil. Very clearly, very plainly, very easily. But if you're an atheist and you believe that morals come from society, then what you have to say is they were not objectively wrong, because in order for something to be objectively wrong, there must be something that is objectively correct. So they can say, I personally don't agree with it, but they cannot say that it is objectively wrong. See, and this will destroy pretty much any atheist and every liberal argument 100%, but then again, atheism and liberalism kind of go hand in hand. The two things that will always destroy their arguments are objective truth and objective reality. So, I feel like there was something else I wanted to throw on to this. Oh yeah. If your morals come from society, then your morals are never set in stone. Because society is ever changing. If you take a look at, here's a great example, is slavery. And now I know that some people will be upset about this because they'll be like, but you can take a look in the Bible and it talks about slavery and it doesn't say not to do slavery, and I'll answer that in a second. But slavery used to be seen as an acceptable thing. Society deemed slavery to be acceptable. It wasn't until Christians were like, no, that's too much. And yes, Christians were the ones that ended slavery. What do you think Great Britain was? Yeah, that was a Christian nation. Well, what do you think America was? Oh yeah, that was a Christian nation. America and England. I mean, I guess I will give props to England because they were the ones that first started the abolitionist movement. But America also fought an entire war to end it. And we don't get enough credit for that. We don't get enough credit. It's like, yes, there were people who were engaged in slavery and some of the worst, most diabolical forms of slavery. But we fought an entire war to say, hey, this is fucked up. We need to, like, not ever do this. Ever, all men are created equal. And in order for all men to be created equal, there must be a creator that created them equal. So that was a bit of a side tangent, a bit of a USA moment. But people will point to the Bible, and I feel like I briefly started talking about this when Joshy came in. Because I'm going to be honest, he got me off on this huge side tangent, and I don't really remember where I was at. And since I freestyle this, I raw dog it. I don't have a script or anything. I'm just going based off the heart. It's easy for me to lose place and forget what I've said. But it'll talk about it in Leviticus. It'll talk about slavery specifically. And like I was saying, Leviticus is not the perfect moral law. That only comes from the Ten Commandments, which came directly from God, and Jesus and his teachings. Those are the perfect moral laws. What we do find when it talks about slavery, and it's actually not very long in the Bible, it doesn't really talk about slavery all that much. The practices of the time for slavery were not as cruel as we think of in more like modern day senses. And by modern day, I mean I guess 1800s to now, because there are still slaves out there. There are slaves in Africa. There are sex slaves all over the world. So 1800s till now. Slavery of the time was not as cruel as that. It was more like you're a house servant, essentially. And what we find is that the practices in the Bible that talk about slavery actually reduce the cruelty that was, it reduces cruelty and tries to limit slavery. And then in the New Testament, people will say, but in the New Testament it talks about slavery. But it really doesn't. And as a matter of fact, slavery is antithetical to Jesus' teachings. Jesus teaches that all of us are children of God, and that we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourself. So that, again, the concept of slavery is antithetical to that very notion that Jesus brings up. That's why I don't accept that argument. And then when slavery is directly mentioned in the New Testament, if you read the entire chapter, it's not condoning slavery. What it is doing is using examples from the world around them that people would be incredibly familiar with, since it was a more widespread practice than it is today. People would be quite familiar with the concept of a slave and their master. The point in the New Testament, whenever that's brought up, is again not a is not condoning. I don't know, connotation. I don't know. I can't. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's not condoning slavery. It's using that as an example to show how we should be, respectful and obedient to authority, like a slave is to their master. If you take that out of context and you just read that, it might sound like it's condoning slavery, but if you read the entire chapter, it is not. It's, again, just using an example. That would be like, I mean, if you were to do that same concept of just taking something out of context and saying it's condoning something, you could say, like, you could say that someone who's advocating for gun control is actually advocating for shooting up a school. It's a very slippery slope. That's why you have to, like, actually go through and read it in its entirety and understand the meaning that it's trying to get at. So, yeah. I feel like those were some pretty interesting things that we talked about. I know that definitely morality being a case for God is something that we're going to talk about in more detail one day, because one day we're going to read Mere Christianity, and when we do, that's one of the cases for God that C.S. Lewis makes, and I found it to be the most convincing. It's the most convincing argument I've ever heard for there being God. Like, even more so than, something can't come from nothing with, like, the Big Bang. Or, I mean, I guess I've heard now that's like, well, just the particles always existed. And it's like, well, how can particles always exist, but you think it's funny that, like, God has always existed? Like, it's, I don't know. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But whatever, like I said, I find... yeah, I find morality to be a much stronger case. Because, again, like I said, and this is the takeaway I really want you to have. So in case of, you ever need to, like, defend your faith, an atheist cannot say that Hitler was objectively wrong. They can't. Because it breaks their worldview. You can, if you're a Christian, you can proudly say that Hitler was objectively wrong. And you know that because Jesus told us how we should live. And the things that the Nazis were doing were very counter to what Jesus said, or how Jesus said that we should live. So, yeah, thank you to Joshy. Thank you to anyone else. Oh, I guess Slicks was here. Thank you to Slicks and anyone else may have tuned in and didn't chat with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, YouTube crowd. Who's going to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.